Okay, thanks, Ryan. For those of you listening, I'm Dave Biros. I'm an associate professor here at Spears School of Business at Oklahoma State University in lovely Stillwater, Oklahoma. And I have with me the guy behind most of this research, Madhav Sharma. He is a doctoral candidate here. Will be on the market later this year, and will be interviewing at AMSIS if you are so interested in interviewing him. Madhav started this research, and we just kind of got together and began working on it just because we both had a lot of interest in what's going on with wearables for health behavior. So Madhav, I'm going to let you start get the ball rolling here.
All right. Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Biros. My name is Madhav, as you heard, and I'm a doctoral candidate. This project is about building trust in wearables for health behavior. A little background, starting off with what wearables are. They are a subset of Internet of Things, a technology that's been a driving force in AI and machine learning and a lot of technologies that are coming up. Internet of Things are a connection of physical objects equipped with sensors and actuators that can give feedback to us as well as collect data on us and then manipulate it towards getting meaningful solutions. One of them is wearables. Smart lights are a part of Internet of Things. Smart speakers are a part of Internet of Things, and this technology is exploding. I think Cisco has predicted that there will be around 1 trillion devices within the next couple of years. But these devices are rising a lot in our environment now. Wearables are a subset of Internet of Things. They can be incorporated into clothing or worn on body as accessories. The most popular form of wearables are the wrist-worn wearables, such as Apple Watch, Fitbit, and many others like that. There have also been wearables that you can wear on, like eyeglasses, and even a ring that has come out in the last month.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, so these technologies are rising, and they have many uses. One of them is connectivity. They connect to your portals, shopping lists, emails, texts. But the technology that has moved forward with every iteration is health monitoring. Most wearables, especially the wrist-worn wearables, have these features such as heart rate monitor, electrocardiogram. That's a pretty new one, but activity tracking features such as calories burned, steps walked, and time spent exercising. The major players in the market, such as Apple, Fitbit, and Samsung, even Garmin, have pushed these devices as health and activity tracking devices. Whenever we see advertisement for Apple Watch, they are usually talking about how this has made you healthier or how it can be gifted to our grandparents so that you can monitor their health. Health behavior here, we are going to be using this term a lot, is individuals' actions regarding their health and well-being. They can range from simply increasing their activity if they seem that is towards good of their health, or even visiting a doctor.
So the accuracy is that coming up?
What?
Accuracy.
Accuracy.
Yeah, that coming up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
The market share of wearables has been steadily increasing, especially in the United States in the past couple of years. It is over 60 million devices right now in 2020. These are charts from last year, but we checked them again, and they seem to be holding the trend so far. If the trend is to be followed, in the next 2 years, around 25% of United States population is supposed to have wearables access. Now, with such a high market share, the influence and impact of this technology can be far-reaching. And certain anecdotes have shown that. There have been numerous anecdotes in the past 5 years since one of the most popular wearable, Apple Watch, came out, that these devices have alerted their users of potentially fatal diseases such as heart diseases or irregular heartbeat, and they were influential in saving lives. So if these wearables have life-saving capabilities, they should be used more. However, we did a small survey in our class with a group of students, and we asked them about their use of wearables, that what do they use it for. And the most of them replied it was for fitness tracking, followed by connecting to their emails and texts, followed by health monitoring, which was a pretty big share for 20 to 25-year-olds. And some of them replied other. But when asked if they have ever sought medical attention based on their ratings, only a few responded yes. However, this few is also a significant number if you consider the health of college students, which usually is not that fatal. There's not that many conditions that they are aware of. However, still people were saying that they would access healthcare if their wearables suggested that. That means there is some trust in wearables. However, there are some barriers suggesting that most of them chose to ignore these ratings. We did a literature review over the barriers to use, and this figure kind of gives a rough idea of what a wearable information system looks like. There are 3 levels. One of them is the device, and then the app manufacturer, Apple and Fitbit, make their own apps that measure and report health readings, while there are third-party apps like Strava, which collect data and give their own readings based on that. And these are connected to internet so that the data can be dispersed. So some barriers that we found in literature to the use of wearables, first of them is affordability. These wearables go from $50 to over $500, and some of them even as expensive as $1,000. And not a lot of people can afford them, especially people in need. This is still a luxury device. So that is a barrier to mainstream use, as Patel et al. 2015 found. Then Benbunan and Fish 2018 is a EJIS paper which studied the design and use of wearables. They analyzed the consumer reviews of some wearables which don't have very rich feedback, and they found that users found them difficult to use and hence did not take those readings very seriously. Another one of the issues is accuracy. This is a medical journal, Pivik et al. 2016, which found that only 90% of some of the most accurate wearable has only 90% accuracy when compared to a medical device. However, even then, the medical devices usually have more points of input. For example, ECG usually uses 6 leads in your body to check the electrocardiogram reading. However, in a watch, it's just a wrist and a loop connection from your watch.
Right. This kind of hits close to home to me because I am married to a critical care nurse, and she also has wearables and loves her Fitbit. And but she's been experimenting with things in the hospital, comparing just for anecdotal purposes, comparing how the wearable does to some of the hospital equipment. And in some cases, it's not even close. So that 90% is under the best of conditions.
Yes.
The other thing we found is that depending on how you use the wearable, your readings are going to differ. For example, if you put your Fitbit on your left arm and walk versus putting your Fitbit on your right arm and walk, you're going to get completely different readings. So we think that the accuracy of wearables has a ways to go yet.
Yes, that is correct. Next, quality of feedback has been a great motivator in other IS research on how it will influence the actions of the users, and that is true for wearables as well. Because some of the wearables can give you a low reading of activity, but you will still not be motivated to work out as much. However, if a watch sends an output like, oh, you're way beyond your goals right now, that hits differently to people. And it also depends on the personal disposition to how motivated a person is to take care of their health. Privacy and security concerns have gained some attention because of some anecdotes that involve Strava. Military base was compromised by using Strava ratings because they were able to track how people run around the campus, and some people were running on military campuses, and usually soldiers run around their campus, like take a whole round.
They run the perimeter.
Yes.
And so the individual who was looking at Strava data started noticing that there was this perimeter, a bunch of people running in the desert around the same area. He was trying to figure it out and then realized, oh, that's a military base that nobody knew about. So there could be some compromises and security concerns. So that's just one big example that was out in the news probably about 2 years ago now.
Yes. But such examples have kind of deterred people to use wearables because a lot of people are concerned about their privacy. That is up for debate. So trust formation has been a pillar of IS research for a while, and it has been shown in previous research that trust formation can overcome some barriers to users' acceptance. And that is where we came from this research question, which is how is users' initial trust on wearables formed? We conducted a literature review on trust literature. And first of all, we defined trust more consistently with Meyer et al. 1995's definition that it is willingness to be vulnerable to another party. And we know that trust is not static, thanks to Russo et al. 1998. It has stages of formation, stability, and dissolution. Now, formation, all these three stages are very critical, but since wearables is in a very early stage of its acceptance and market share, it is critical that the trust formation is studied to a noteworthy extent. Initial trust is defined as trust as in an unfamiliar trustee by McKnight et al. 1998. McKnight et al. 1998 came up with a model for initial trust formation for e-commerce, which we are adapting with suitable adjustments for wearables here. Trusters' propensity to trust also plays an important role in formation of initial trust. So there are 3 levels of trust here. One of them is a truster must have a high propensity to trust. Then they should think of wearables as something that is useful enough to trust regarding their healthcare. Then they're supposed to trust the apps manufacturers, the manufacturers or the app makers that collect data and give feedback. So ability, benevolence, and integrity of the app makers and manufacturers is also a critical point in the perception of the trustee. Next, the initial trust formation model is by McKnight et al. 1998 and 2002 is based on the theory of reasoned action. This model was for e-commerce, and while adapting, we found that e-commerce is different from IoT in these aspects. One of them is the wearable use is very automatic in nature instead of active use. So unlike e-commerce where you physically log into a website and then select whatever you want. So your trust levels are very different while using a device that you're wearing that is continuously collecting data. You're not really having that kind of active use. It's more automatic and passive in nature. Second, the haptics feedback is feedback through touch, which provides another dimension for trust regarding users. Some marketing literature has found that things we trust things more in consumer behavior when we can touch them. For example, whenever they are trying to see e-commerce versus brick and mortar stores, some people do like to see the product first before they buy it. And that is true with the relationship of a user with their device, because they are continuously using it. There is a more intimate relationship here. The levels of trust in IoT differ from e-commerce and social media. While in e-commerce, there is a website and the third party you're buying the object from or any item from. Those two are the levels of trust. Here, you're supposed to trust the device to be accurate enough and to provide you with data and collect enough data from you. And the organization such as wearable manufacturer or application maker that is collecting the data as well as providing feedback. So these are the levels of trust. Clarification that the model that we are going to present later on is not a multi-level model, because these things are integrated and have a high interaction with each other, it's just included in the same model. There are no multi-level investigation. The key variables, the key constructs in the trust formation model are trusting behavior. That is the target behavior. Here we are trying to measure if the trust in wearables affects the health behavior, but trusting behavior is defined as users' action that make the user vulnerable to risk. Trusting intentions are the antecedent to behavior, which has two dimensions. One of them is willingness to depend and subjective probability to depend on a certain device or app maker. Trusting beliefs are formed based on users' appraisal of the device, and that shows the confidence of trusters' perception in the trustee, and ability, benevolence, and integrity of the trustee, the perception of the truster on the trustee. So there is previous research has shown a causal relationship between beliefs, which lead to intentions, and intentions that lead to behavior. And our model is consistent with that. For formation of trusting beliefs, there are certain antecedents that have been proposed by research, and we are adding some based on our evaluation of wearables. One of them is disposition to trust, which varies from person to person. Some people are more trusting in nature, they have more faith in humanity. This can arise from their childhood experiences, their environments, and so on. However, there have been scales to measure disposition to trust from person to person. So this plays a role in formation of trusting beliefs. Then there is institution-based trust, which is based on structural assurances and situational normality. Structural assurances refer to the user's belief that there are enough legal and social assurances that no harm will come to them while using a system. And situational normality refers to the environment of the system, that nothing really bad happens there, as in if they use the system, they are less likely to be at risk. Apart from them, there are some user technology factors that can factor into wearable adoption. One of them is source expertise. Users, as we found from our survey before, have different levels of awareness regarding the readings that health wearables take. For example, heart rate. Not many people know how critical the heart rate is, and what signifies as high heart rate versus low heart rate, and what does that mean in each situation. Athletes have a real higher resting heart rate than regular people. So source expertise, as in the awareness of the context of the healthcare device, does feature heavily in their decision to take those devices, suggestions from those devices, from readings. Tech savviness is users' competence in usage of technology. Age is a big predictor of that. However, I'm not an ageist person, so I won't say old people don't know how to use technology. But tech savviness is how savvy are you in using technologies. Some people usually fear there's a techno incompetence aspect to it, that people think that they won't be able to use an Apple Watch, so they don't trust it. Like they're like, oh, I can't use the device. And that is an issue with a lot of marketing campaign that is like directed towards older adults, like people with medical conditions who are above 70 years old. They do not accept these technologies because they don't know how to use them. So that plays an important role in if that will affect their health behavior. Automation bias is users' tendency to use automation as a replacement of information seeking. This can be seen as the opposite end of the spectrum from tech savviness. Some people tend to use technology as the final resort, as in they do not question it if something is provided by the technology. So if a person has high automation bias, they tend to take those readings from the devices more seriously and don't use their own heuristic judgment for things. So these three technology factors can not only affect the formation of trusting beliefs, but can also affect the relationship between disposition to trust and trusting belief, as well as institution-based and trusting belief. Which in our survey that we did in the class, which did not test the whole model, but this was a more of an exploratory study, we found that there was a difference between tech savviness between the people who seek medical attention after their devices alert them of a thing versus the ones that don't. We did not find a difference between accuracy and accuracy perception in both of them. As in, people do, irrespective of their opinion about the accuracy of the device, usually take or not take the suggestions from devices, according to our survey. This is our structural model that we proposed in this research. As you can see, the disposition to trust leads to institution-based trust. These propositions are consistent with McKnight et al.'s source model that we based this research on, all the way to trusting intentions, which leads to trusting behavior. We believe that user technology factors such as source expertise, automation bias, and tech savviness play a role in formation of trusting belief. If a person has a high disposition to trust, their low source expertise, high source expertise can deter them from forming trusting beliefs. Similarly, if they have very low automation bias or very low tech savviness, even a person who has a high disposition to trust may not form trusting beliefs accordingly. Similarly, institution-based trust, even if a person does believe that Apple or Amazon or Fitbit is trustworthy company to provide them with health information and other readings, their high source expertise such that they know too much about the topic to take a risk-based reading seriously, or their automation bias and tech savviness can influence the relationship between institution-based trust and trusting beliefs.
Okay.
Right. So we haven't tested this model empirically yet, but we do have paths to do that. Measures from McKnight et al. 2002 for these three measures, disposition trust, institution-based trust, and trusting intentions, which includes trusting beliefs and yeah, that's it. They can be adapted from McKnight et al. 2002, which was in an e-commerce context, to a more wearables context. Wearable specific measures can be developed using the references that we use to for the user technology factors for source expertise, tech savviness, and automation bias. Trusting behavior, as in most of the theory of reasoned action studies and information literature, information systems literature in general, actual behavior is harder to measure than other things which are more survey based. So an experiment can be used to measure the behavior of users of wearables. The user technology factors such as source expertise, tech savviness, and automation bias have been shown to be able to be manipulated, but that is as per your IRB's.
Yeah, we'll have to get to an IRB on that one.
Yes.
One of the things for the members of the audience that we would like to ask if you have any ideas or inputs on or suggestions for measuring this, working with this model and measuring this model, we'd love to hear them. We were just discussing with Ryan earlier how nice it would be to have unlimited funds. We'll just buy everybody a Fitbit and do an experiment, but unfortunately we don't have that level of funds. Maybe we can afford a Fitbit, I don't know, but we'll go on from there. Madhav, go ahead.
So yes, even if you have any suggestions about improving the model or adding more constructs to it that can be valid, we are open to suggestions. Implications of this research: if the proposed hypotheses are supported, it has the potential to contribute to technology use theories and theories about trust and IoT, which is a rising technology as discussed before. There are numerous implications to practice, such as the systems can be developed better, such that they have a higher tendency to get accepted and used. The marketing of these wearables have been geared towards healthcare. However, if automation bias, source expertise, and tech savviness are issues in that, they need to alter the marketing such that they have better reach. Societally, if wearables do the things that they are intended to do, and if the market share keeps on rising, it has tendency to change the primary healthcare delivery system, because a lot of these diseases and conditions can be detected by the wearables. Some of the analysts have predicted that Apple Healthcare could take valuation of $313 billion by 2027. Similar predictions have been made for other wearable manufacturers, which are moving towards a more healthcare dominant strategy. And this does have very high implications in business and theory if the trends hold. And that was our presentation. Thank you.
Sorry to come to an abrupt end, but this is where we're at. We're at a stage now where we just have to figure out a good methodology and get out there and actually start collecting data on this. We're still trying to figure out the best route to take. And like I said, if we have anybody in the audience that has some good ideas, we'd be happy to entertain them. And since it's pretty quiet, Ryan, we'll go back to you.
Well, they can't talk until we allow them to talk. So I believe you can, for those of you who are attending and listening, if you raise your hand, I can turn on your microphone and give you the ability to speak. Thank you very much, Madhav and Dave, for the presentation. While I give people time to come up with questions, I did want to also recognize Melissa, who's here attending with us from AIS. She's the one who set up the technology for this for us and got us ready to go. So thank you very much, Melissa.
Thank you.
And does anyone out there have a comment or a question or something to add to this? Oh, all right, Cynthia, you are on.
Hi, this is Cynthia LaRouche from Florida International University. My question is, in terms of the cost of throwing a bunch of different technology out there, particularly Apple Watch or what have you, is some of this is how long you really need it for. Because in terms of just looking at trust, it's not a situation where you're looking at behavioral change, where you basically will have to put out into the field for at least 6 to 8 weeks or more a bunch of these types of devices. So one thing that you're thinking about when you're thinking about this and trying to determine your methodology is how long and what type of interaction with the actual device is really necessary to test the theory.
Absolutely, we agree.
Yes.
That's a really good point, and I'm writing that down right now.
Yes, that's why we were focusing on the formation of trust part, but you're right, we don't know what point of time does a person form a trust. So this is a good suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, because even something like in a focus group situation where you have a watch or what have you, or two of them, and you pass it around and just let people see it, feel it, touch it, you walk through what it can do, and then move on from there. You may just be capturing that initial perception or reaction, and that might be a start.
That's right.
Right. That would be good.
Very cool. Thank you. I believe Reza is the next hand that I saw go up. Let's see. I have given you permission now to speak. So Reza, if you just enable your microphone, you'll be able to ask the question or make the comment. It's showing that you are self-muted.
Yes. Do you hear me right now?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear.
Okay.
So thank you for your presentation. It was a very nice presentation. Just a question that came to my mind because I had worked on, a trust model in the past. The way you talk about the difference between IoT trust model and the e-commerce and social media, I didn't get exactly in what ways they are different because at the end, when you search for the question of trust in e-commerce and social media, you come up with some research with pretty similar things, items and factors, variables which are tested. So I just want to know a little bit more about the difference that you consider between, IoT and, social media and e-commerce. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. We are exploring the differences between e-commerce and social media as like the technologies that came before it, and IoT being a pervasive trend. We are looking at it with a lens that we're using the same lenses from social media and e-commerce, but we are looking at what is different between these technologies and IoT. So one of them, you're right that there are not very big differences in the things that we proposed, but one of them that we mentioned here was haptics feedback. So some research that we came across said that that might have an effect on how it is different from social media and e-commerce. Similarly, active and automatic use was the one, and the level of trust basically with the technologies is different, but we are still exploring at what degree, what are the other factors that can be different when we are comparing three of these technologies: social media, e-commerce, and IoT.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Okay, so move on to Yafang. It looks like you are also there we go.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. It's very exciting, and I feel like your way of differentiate IoT and social media and e-commerce is quite interesting. And I think my question still echo to the last question. By looking at the model, I was really thinking about what kind of theoretical contribution that you're trying to approach, by having those kind of a moderator into a privileged tested model. So if you can explain more, that will be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yes, the contribution that we were looking for is, again, like we answered the last question, we believe that there are some differences and a lot of similarities between the technologies that have come before IoT and this ones. So these three are source expertise, automation bias, and tech savviness are three of the ones that we explored. Now, these three technologies do play an important factor in trust formation of social media and e-commerce as well, but awareness of data being shared and a lot of other things that are more wearable specific, they are the ones that we are trying to uncover using this research. Also, a lot of times in social media, the nature of trust was very different from e-commerce and even in wearables. While in social media, it was more of an emotional trust between people.
Okay.
It is more of a cognitive trust in the IoT perspective.
Got you. Yeah, thank you. And I have another question, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Yeah, because when I look at the model, I feel that the moderator that you add in, source expertise, automation bias, or tag savviness, is kind of some characteristic related to users, right? And I was trying to figure out how you really bring the uniqueness of wearable or the uniqueness of the interaction between consumers and wearables into this model.
Can you repeat the question?
I mean,
I guess you're asking the uniqueness of the relationship between users and their wearables?
yep, like,
Yes. Oh, the uniqueness in these.
because I can tell from the model that like you're adding the different, you're kind of like adding the different characteristic of users, so that we can differentiate how different kind of consumers have different kind of levels of trust towards wearables. But I'm actually more curious on like, have you ever considered to put some like factors which are related to the different or uniqueness, unique interaction between the users and the wearables, which may have a chance to lead their like disposition to trust a little bit different.
Okay. That's a good question and a suggestion for us to think about. We don't have an answer.
Yeah.
An answer right now, but that's really something to think about.
Yes.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you.
I still see hands up, and I'm not sure if this is repeated questions or if the hands just never went down. I'm going to go back to Cynthia. I think I saw your hand come back up again. You are unmuted.
No, my hand was not up.
Oh, okay. And Reza, is that the same story? Hands back down. All right. I think that is all of our comment. I'm going to just lower all the hands there. Oh, Gaurav wants to say something. Let's let him in. All
Yeah.
right.
Okay, I have a quick comment. The story is interesting, and I particularly like the moderator analysis. In fact, in my own research, I use a lot of moderators, and I feel that whenever there is a moderator, it provides more contextual analysis and more contextual insight. So I will encourage you to pursue this moderation. Maybe look into moderation of like between the path disposition to trust and trusting intentions as well. As
Okay.
many, because if you can argue for moderation between disposition to trust or institution-based trust to trusting beliefs, look for other moderations interesting, and more importantly, you need to get some strong theory, that why do you think that such moderators will exist at first place?
Okay,
Okay.
really good point.
Thanks.
Yeah, because contextual, like if you think about basically theory of context and moderation, it depends upon 5 things: why, who, where, when, who,
Correct.
basically those type of things. So any of those can be basically moderator.
Okay.
If you think that who is different, why is different, so that explains the moderation. So try to argue that why, or what is the underlying question, that will impact out of those 5 things, right? Who, when, where, why, and
Okay.
who, those type of things.
Who, where, when, why. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're basically like typical 6 things, I guess. So that, and source expertise and automation bias and tech savvy. Plus, like lot will depend upon how you collect data on this.
That's right. We are
But
trying to
this
get.
moderation analysis makes it interesting. If you don't include moderation, then I will probably not be so much interested in it. But because of this
Makes sense.
moderation, I find it more interesting. So, but having a good theory behind it will make it more rich.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
But
Thank you.
yeah, thank you, and thank you for sharing with us. Very nice.
All right. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for your comments and questions, and thanks again to Madhav and Dave for presenting for us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, and thank you for the feedback. We've been writing everything down. This is going to be very useful.
Great. So yeah, thank you again. Keep an eye out. We don't yet know when the next Midwest AIS webinar will be or who will be presenting. If you're interested in participating and presenting, get in touch with me. We're always looking for more people to share. But thank you very much for joining us, and have a good day and a good weekend.
All right. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thanks for hosting this. We appreciate it.
Yep.